Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome back. It has been a while because life has started up again. Theater has opened up, and I won't say it's an unfortunate thing that we are having to do this a little less often than every Thursday or every other Thursday because we are still keeping the things that we have learned over the last year. We're still keeping those going. Um, our anniversary of Torn was June 3rd, but I was in the middle of Evita and couldn't do a show. I wanted to do the show with the original cast, and people have moved on, some in California, some in different places. And again, because life has opened back up, people got to work now.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I did not even realize it. I was like, it was easy for us to do before because we were all home. Nobody was working, but now people got to work. So Torn hasn't gone anywhere. It is still a movement, but it just may not. You just may not see as many people because people do have lives. So y'all have been here more than once. So just introduce yourselves, and we won't even do the crazy questions. We'll talk. We're just gonna have a discussion. So, Shonda, starting with you.
Hi, friends. I'm Shonda Branch, cultural creative, mommy caster, queen, performer, singer, dancer, actor, theater educator, friend of the arts, and just really excited to be here. I've been thinking a lot about how far we've come and how far we haven't come in the past year, and I am looking forward to having a good conversation. And also, the 2-year-old is here in the house with me while I'm live, so I want to go ahead and give that fair warning right now.
Put her on camera. That's the thing.
That's right, exactly. We don't have a problem with that at all. We've gotten her started early, so we all have played a part in making sure she goes down the right path. So it is fine. Uh,
Absolutely.
Tim, Mama Tim, your turn.
I am Tim Locklear. I'm the managing artistic director for North Raleigh Arts and Creative Theater. I am a creative who loves to collaborate with people and make art. I am a mama to many, and I adopt several children. Those two on top of me, on top of the screen, are my kids, and they know that, and I love them dearly. And I'm so happy that we're back doing what we love and getting ready to do theater. It was so nice. This last week, we had our first in person camp at Interact, and listening to the kids' laughter and having life in the theater again. It has just been wonderful. And like Shonda just said, reflecting back on this past year and the work that has been done and the work that we still have to do. I'm already planning for the 22-23 season and reading scripts and being moved and got some exciting things for our play reading community. So I'm really excited. I'm like you.
Great, great. So let me ask, Sean. Obviously, there's only two of you, so it's definitely not a problem asking both of you the same question. Shonda,
Mhm.
where were you, or what were you doing, if you can remember, when you first either heard about or saw the George Floyd video?
Um, I remember that Ahmaud Arbery had just been killed. And I remember that we were grappling with that as a community. And I remember one of the things that I kept thinking in regard to his death was this child died in February. Why are we just now finding out? Why is this just now surfacing? I remember just being struck by the fact that, this wasn't new. It had happened, and some space had already occurred after his passing, and I was angry about the fact that we didn't know for so long. And then just a few days behind that, we watched in real time as George Floyd was killed. And
Mhm.
it literally was a moment by moment. We had the footage right away. We had access to the images right away. Witnesses were speaking out about it in real time, and I was really struck by just the gravity of the difference in the way that happened. Um, just being really sad and just being really frustrated that we were going through this yet again. And with Breonna Taylor's murder happening, there was a string of things that all happened like dominoes. And I just remember looking to my husband and saying, wow, we're in trouble. This is a big deal. And our country, come here, baby. And our country is facing some hard times. I remember having that thought very clearly on my mind. So here she is. I knew it wouldn't be long.
Hey, babe. Hey. Let her stick her tongue out. Hey.
Say hello.
You gonna speak to Uncle Juan? Oh, you want to be bashful now. Any other time. All right. Tim, do you remember where you were or what you were doing when you saw the video?
Well, since we were in basically lockdown, I call it, I remember watching it on TV live, like, Shonda was saying. And I think my immediate thing was, where are the other policemen to pull him off? Why isn't somebody knocking him off of this man? Because the man, George Floyd was subdued. And why didn't we know about Ahmaud Arbery beforehand, before all of this happened? And then I guess the word is dumbfounded that the people, granted.
Hold on a second. Shonda, mute yourself right quick.
I'm sorry.
It's all right. Go ahead.
I guess the word is dumbfounded that no one was there to try to help George Floyd once he was subdued, to take that man off of him. And then Breonna Taylor. And I remember the day after Breonna Taylor died or was murdered, I'm not going to say died, she was murdered, turning to Jim and saying, this is what the politics of Trump, I never called him a president. I just said he was a tyrant. This is what he just added fuel to the fire to allow this to come to the forefront. It was always there. Racism has been there, but just allowing what he said, up in Charlottesville, and allowing the Klans to tell that there were good people out there, this just fueled the fire. And I was just dumbfounded that, this was continuing to happen. But also, I've been trying to do the work throughout, all along. So to say I was surprised, no, I wasn't surprised, but I was just shocked that all the people were standing there and not trying to help.
Okay. Tim, while I still have you here, you said something about, you talked about dump. But Dump didn't, and y'all know this is not me talking. Dump didn't start this.
Oh, no.
Wait, no, let me finish. All this latest stuff and stuff being brought up about racism was started by Obama being in office. Comments? This has been said.
Okay, here's what I'm going to say to that. Here's my honest opinion. Trump is simply a repercussion of having President Obama in office. I mean, that is just the backlash from us finally having a black president, a great black president for 8 years, in my opinion. That was the pushback from having him, was putting someone in office like that orange orangutan is a good way to put it. So I'm sorry, I speak plainly. That's the way I see it. So, and this is my opinion, not the theaters, not anybody else. This is my opinion. So
yes, okay. Shonda,
I have to agree with that. You had a black man rise to the highest office in the land. And the immediate reaction to President Obama being in office was a Congress and a Senate who were determined that they were not going to let him be effective in that office. Um, I hear very often from folks who get upset because they don't feel like he did enough for Black people, that he didn't do enough for a specific subset of folks. And, my reaction to that was he didn't get to do enough for the American people in general. He was stopped at the gate. I am amazed and proud of all of the things that he did accomplish. Let's talk about Obamacare still being intact despite the repeated attacks on it. And there are a number of other policies that he was actually able to enact to bring the country a step and a half forward from where we were. Our economy was intact. Folks were making more money. Jobs were available. There was just a lot of good things happening despite all of the things that he was up against. And so when you have that, I feel like there was a pendulum swing that tried to put Black folks back in their place. And it was almost like there was one of the phrases that I hear often is take the country back and make America great again. Taking the country back to me equates to, and I'm going to bring this back to theater and to movies, cinema. I was sitting and watching Disney Plus because lockdown. And I was watching The Parent Trap. And I was watching this scene where they were having this wonderful little school dance between the two camps, and all the kids got together, and they had on these lovely little dresses, and it dawned on me in that moment, this is what they're talking about. This is what they think that they're taking it back to. This, because I discovered there's no Black people here. There's no Black people here. There's no people of color. All of these kids are little rich white kids who came out to the woods for sleepaway camp over the summer. And don't get me wrong, I love those movies. I love that wholesome feeling that you get when you watch them of a simpler time, a less complicated space. But I know that that's fiction. That's not real. And so when I hear that narrative about make America great, take our country back, it is, like Tim said, a direct rebuttal to having had a Black president who got in there and did everything that he could to improve, to improve the state of our nation despite being up against a brick wall. I rambled, but I think y'all get
No, we got your point. No, you said what needed to be said. No, that wasn't rambling. Okay, so and I had my thought, and I should have wrote it down because I lost it trying to actually listening to you. And it was something about dummy Trump. Give me a second. Okay, moving on. January 6th. Let's go to January 6th. Tim, and I've asked you this before, but I'm going to ask you again because it might be somebody different and new watching. What were your thoughts on January 6th?
My first thought was, where were the police? Where was the National Guard? I remember sitting there, we were watching it upstairs, and I said, where is everybody at? And what floored me is, we were all on Facebook and people were saying things, and that's exactly what I put on Facebook that day is, where's the National Guard? And I've always been a person who can agree to disagree regardless of your political beliefs. And there is a gentleman who I went to high school with who has different political beliefs than I do. And he said to me, now, I'm going to get into it, so, because that's why you have me here. he said to me, Tim, I thought you were better than that. Why didn't you say something during the Black Lives Matter movement when people were marching in the streets and there was destruction of property and all of this stuff? I said, hold on. I said, I always support peaceful protesting because that is in the Constitution. You're allowed to have a difference of opinion. You're allowed to peacefully protest. However, I don't support anybody who destroys property. If you're going to get out there and protest, you protest peacefully, make your point. But I also brought up the point that between me and him, I was a veteran. And what I fought for with this country, I fought for the Constitution, and I'm as patriotic as anybody else. But don't come to me and tell me what they did was a protest. It was an act of sedition. It was treason, and it should be treated as so. That was not protesting. They had been given a directive by the quote unquote commander in chief. We all saw it. And that's what happened. So January 6th was a complete assault for everything I stood for as a veteran, for what I was fighting for when I was in the Air Force, because I stand behind the Constitution. I think, there's a freedom of speech. I think people have the right to bear arms, but we also need gun control. People need to use common sense when it comes to those kind of things. People automatically think that people are going to come to their door and take guns or things like that. And we all know that that's not the case. So January 6th, all those people with the assault weapons inside the Capitol, which is, to me, holy ground for the Constitution, for what we stand for in our democracy. And, people need to learn from their history. And we know what happened in Germany for World War II. And so I have heard people say that it will never happen here. Well, it was close to happening here.
Very close. Yeah.
It happened little by little in Germany.
Mm-hmm.
It happened a few folks at a time, and it didn't happen with an act of sedition, with people forcibly overtaking the nation the way we saw here. It was such a subtle, slow creep through the nation. So, when people say it can't happen here, it can't happen in the same way. I think by nature, Americans are not subtle. It's just not who and what we are. And so when I remember I was sitting at Pure Life Theater when everything happened, and a friend said, "My God, they have taken the Capitol." And it went completely over my head because I was like, okay, yeah. And I had to stop and think for a moment. I had to stop and pause and say, oh my God, wait, what did you just say?
Mm-hmm.
And I remember watching on my cell phone, the blow by blow, getting the reports in, and just being in total amazement that, okay, well, here we go. That's one more thing on our apocalypse, bingo card that's going on. They're going to overthrow the national government. And I just remember just being amazed at all of the folks who had been saying over time, oh no, we don't, that's not something we have to worry about. People had more respect for the process, and people had more respect for, voting and what that means in our democracy and blah, blah. I was like, no, they don't. They don't have respect for human life. Why would they have respect for an ideal?
Mm-hmm. Shonda, if I may, but don't you think the seeds had been planted over time to give them the opportunity to do that? And I guess that's what I meant about
the comparison to Germany.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
The
Absolutely.
seeds were planted over time.
Absolutely.
I was in the same situation. Because I was home with the theater. Home from the theater and doing some things from home. I was sitting watching TV, and Jim was in his home office, and I said, "They're taking the Capitol." And he come down. He said, "No." I said, "Look," and he was just, his mouth dropped up, and he couldn't believe it.
And I remember visiting the Capitol some years ago, and touring. And one of the things that they kept coming back to was how sacred these spaces were, and how how some of those areas have been carefully preserved, and how they're so careful in the upkeep of that place. And they were very, very proud to remind visitors that, this, not even during the Civil War. The last time that this was overtaken was, you know, well before that. I'm probably gonna like get my history wrong, and somebody's social studies teacher is gonna fuss about it and call me stupid online, but that's okay too. But I think that it's significant that we have come to a place in our nation's history where we are willing to do things to each other that we didn't even do during the Civil War, when we were literally at war with each other. That never occurred. And so, to see images as they developed over time of a Confederate flag in the US Capitol was disturbed. And like it brought me back to, like, what kind of people are these? They defecated in a corner. What kind of human being goes in the corner and drops trowel and does that in a building because they're mad? That's not the kind of those are not fine people on both sides. I do not believe, and I may be wrong, but I do not believe that that is the kind of thing that happened during Black Lives Matter protests. I don't think anybody went into anybody's sacred spaces and pooped. And, I may sound flippant, and I may sound like I'm making light of it, but I'm not. I'm really stressing the point that there is a certain type of person who does that type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. So you know what? Something you said, Shonda, made me say, okay, I got 3 screens sitting up here. I can do something. So a fire damaged the Capitol in 1812. We might as well go ahead and give a history lesson while we're here. Construction, wait a minute, how did that? Oh, construction for the one we know now started in 1793. But the 1812 fire damaged it. There was a fight about, of course, dealing with slavery. In 1856, there were some members of the place in there, the senators, they were fighting each other. There was a shooting in 1915. A German professor had 3 sticks of dynamite that he carried in there. March 1st, 1954, 4 Puerto Rican Americans fired guns in the House of Representatives. March 1st, 1971, a bomb exploded in the Capitol. 13 years later, in 83, a bomb tore through the second floor of the Senate wing of the Capitol. But the only storming of it from outside was this year. The only one. So that says a lot here. Now, I remember what I wanted to ask before. Okay, so there have been monuments of George Floyd. There have been paintings. They have a little makeshift George Floyd set up thing on the street where he was killed.
The square.
And the square, yes. And the first thing you hear from a Trumpster is he was a thief, and he was a drug head, and he was a porn star. And y'all are honoring him.
He was a father. He was a human. He was somebody's son. Like, we've got to get out of the politics of respectability and the fact that that somebody's stature has some sort of weight in the manner in which they deserve to be killed, or the manner in which they deserve to die. If we can knock that out, and I posted something on my Modern Black Mommy site the other day that I thought was significant. Hang on, I'm fighting with a 2-year-old. Stop, leave that alone. And it was simply, I'm raising my babies to love your babies. It's that simple. If we can get out of this whole, well, he did this and he was that, and putting all of these labels on people, it somehow indicates that maybe there is something about what he did that he deserved that. Nobody deserves to have their neck crushed for 10 minutes. That's not reasonable. And it really, really bothers me when they drag somebody's past into the politics of how they were killed. Nobody deserves that, period.
Tim, any comments on that, Tim?
No, I just echo what Shonda said. I feel like, people, if people, that punishment, whether he did a crime or not, that didn't suit with what, he did. The thing is just like Shonda said, he was the first thing when you ask Shonda that question is, he was a human being. And he was not treated like a human being. He was treated like some rabid animal in the street to be pinned down and put to death. And that's just not humane. I mean, that's the way I see it. He was a human being. Regardless, we have all done things in our life. Anyone who says they don't, they're telling a lie. Every one of us have done something in our life, but none of us has deserved that, and he didn't either.
Okay. Let me ask you a question. As when it comes to what we are experiencing, actually, see, I'm thinking of my words because Tim, you said it earlier. This isn't new. This has been going on all along. They're just different circumstances around it now. So what do you think the best weapon is for a person of minority when it comes to policing?
Wow.
And if you can't answer, no.
I'm
you think
thinking,
if you can't right now, then Shonda, if you got an answer, then you answer. If not, then we can wait. Who is calling me? They don't know I'm on. That's my daddy. Mama, daddy calling me. Call daddy and find out what he want, Mom. I don't know what he want. I can't answer the phone right now. Go ahead.
I would say this, regardless, it's what I do. Let me say it this way. I think most people, if they're pulled over, they respect the police, they answer, they do what they're supposed to do. There's good policemen and there's bad police. There's good people, there's bad people. And I'm not talking about color of skin. I'm talking about whether you're white, brown, purple, it doesn't matter. We know that there's good people and bad people, and that goes for the police also. I know several good policemen who do their job, who is kind, all that kind of stuff. Not being a person who presents as a BIPOC person, that's just a hard question for me to answer because I don't have the answer. I really don't.
Okay. And that's an answer, and an honest answer. Shonda, do you have anything on that?
I think the way that you phrased it is significant. You are looking for a weapon against the police, whereas my immediate thought is a defense against the police, because I said this to somebody and the individual disagreed with me, but I thought that was, well, let me tell you how it went. Got into a conversation about policing and defunding and refunding and all of that stuff. And the statement that I made was, I think we can all agree on a few basic facts. We want all people to feel safe when it comes to the police, and we want for police to do what they are supposed to do, what they are charged with doing. And the person disagreed. And I was like, so if we don't even have a foundational agreement about that, then how do we move forward? How do you problem solve beyond that point? If you can't even agree on what it is you need the police to do or how you want to feel when the police are involved. Because I'm telling you right now, if I get in trouble, I'm calling the police, and I want the police to show up, and I want them to help me. That's just what it is. And I am going to have to, I think one of the things that I know and understand is that when I activate that system when I call the police, that I am going to have to put my brownness, my blackness on the back burner and not have an attitude when they show up, because I need their help. And it's just as simple as that. I think that, again, like Tim said, there are good police, there are bad police, there are police in the middle, there are police who have um, implicit bias, there are police who have biases that they are unaware of, there are police who were raised to do right by everybody, and police who are there because they get off on bullying people. There's a spectrum involved here. And I think that what we as a society have to do is reframe what we need the police for, what situations they need to be involved in, and we need to reframe how we interact with the police, in terms of when police systems are activated.
Okay.
Again, I'm rambling, but
No.
I think y'all see my heart in all of this.
Yes,
Nobody
well,
needs to be afraid of the police. They're here to help. And the fact that we have to struggle with that, and the fact that I have to put the fact that, when the police show up, I have to like go out of my way to help them understand that I called you because I'm the one in need of assistance and I'm not the threat. I think that that is significant in and of itself.
I get, if I may, I guess I can say this, and let me preface this by saying I'm not standing up for police when I say this, but I think, Shonda, I told you the story, that I know a policeman, I'm not calling any names, who had turned in other policemen who were bad and doing things they shouldn't do. And in their situation, they were called before a city council person and accused of doing something that they were not doing. This person had gotten several accommodations for saving people's lives, and they stepped away from being, and it was a good policeman who had been doing the right thing and had turned bad officers in, and somehow it got turned around on him, and he resigned from being a good policeman. So I think in those kinds of instances, what Shonda just said about the way society is and the way about, I want to say this the right way, what you said about the way the police work, Shonda, I want to say it reflects on the way society is. The police departments reflect the way society has been, and we all know that. And so you can train all you want to, but it starts from the cradle. Racism is taught. Children, you can put children together of all colors. They're going to play together. They're going, they're going to play. They're going to love on one another. They hug each other. They're in the playgrounds together. So that is taught. And that's to me, that's where it all starts.
Yeah, so, you're right. Long before they ever become a police officer, long before. Some things I was hearing, I said I need to write stuff down. Piggybacking off of what I even said, what I asked, I said earlier that this is not a new thing, and this always happened, and just as frequently as it happens now, it's happened before. The guy, I forget his name, the one down in Jasper, Texas, that they drugged behind a truck until his body parts were scattered for miles. Why do you guys think that more is being known about it now than 10, 15, 20, 30 years ago? What is the reason? What in your mind is the reason?
People have camera phones. People have cell phones. There is undeniable documentation at this point. And again, it happens in real time. When we were relying on the word of Black folks versus the word of a fine, upstanding police officer, that that was something that, again, people were forced to make a jump on and make a judgment call about, and they could believe it or not believe it, they could see it or not see it.
Mm-hmm.
But with the invention and the widespread distribution of these devices, um, and I mean, even now there are apps that you just say a key phrase and it automatically starts recording, it automatically downloads and
Mm-hmm.
sends it to 5 people on your list, so that the police can't get a hold of your device and erase the information. And there are all of these things that have been developed recently, specifically with an eye to documenting occurrences that are happening with the police.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that has been why we are seeing it, and we are having to confront it, so specifically because, it, again, this isn't new. They've been lynching Black folks since emancipation.
Mm-hmm.
There has never been a time period where Black bodies were safe in the United States. Let's just put it there. There has never been a time in history. Um, and I just feel like, with it being undeniable, you can see it, you can hear it. We had all 10 minutes of George Floyd's murder on record and posted to Facebook before anybody else could have anything to, even before
Mm-hmm.
the media outlets could get a hold of it. The same with the advent of like these doorbell cameras and stuff. Okay. If nobody happened to have a cell phone out, you can trace the cameras from door to door to door and
Mm-hmm.
see exactly what's happened. There's just so much documentation now that it's undeniable. And I think that's why some folks have had to go out of their way to justify it. Well, he shouldn't have fought back. He should have just done what the police officer said, and this, that, and the other, and blah, blah, blah. Well, we're stuck in this spiral, folks.
Mm-hmm.
Black people are seeing themselves murdered, and then they are being confronted by police and they are afraid that they are now going to be murdered. There's a different sensibility when you fear for your life. All of this lay down and cooperate stuff goes out the window when you are in fear of your life. It's hard to be reasonable when you are in fear of
Mm-hmm.
your life. And so this spiral puts us in a place where, again, Black bodies continue to be unsafe, and that is unacceptable. Um, Now, with that said, policing is important and necessary, and I want the police in place to ensure that those folks who are not following the laws of our society that are put there to keep us safe, I want police in place to make sure that those folks do, or are taken off the streets and not allowed to make society unsafe for everyone else. But I think that we have to have some grace and some understanding about why um, why folks behave a certain way when they find themselves in a certain situation with police.
Mm-hmm.
Well, okay. Tim, let me ask you a question.
Mm-hmm.
Why didn't this work for Rodney King?
I think it was the time we didn't have cell phones. Even though the thing with Rodney King was videotaped, it wasn't as close as what happened with George Floyd. Um, and I think the police who had Rodney King should have went to jail, and been
Mm-hmm.
held accountable. But
Mm-hmm.
it was a different time.
Mm-hmm.
If it
Mm-hmm.
was me, if it was left up to me, they'd have went to jail. But that
Mm-hmm.
I guess it was just a different time, and we're in a different climate, and people are being more aware. And
Mm-hmm.
we're trying. If when I say aware, we're in a different society where people are being held accountable. And when I
Mm-hmm.
say being held accountable, I'm talking about for your day to day actions because of what Shonda just said, because of cell phones. And you can't, I mean, the average person, I'm not talking about police now, I'm talking about average people. When you're sitting around with each other and somebody hits a record button, you can't talk your way out of things that you've already said. It's just like,
Mm-hmm.
um, I guess I'll use a reality show for an example. They talk about editing. If it came out of your mouth, you said it. You know, it's that kind of thing. But when
Mm-hmm.
it came to Rodney King, I just think it was a different time in where we were. Not that they shouldn't have been held accountable, but I
Mm-hmm.
think the momentum is there now,
Mm-hmm.
and um, there's different generations who have come up being, um, I want to use the word woke, but that's not correct. But being more aware of what's right and the being in a more accepting society, is that right? Um,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
so.
Yeah. And I also, I mean, I asked the question. Every now and then I'm gonna give my opinion too.
Mm-hmm,
I think with that in that situation, the Rodney King situation was something that was rare to have it on videotape. So
mm-hmm,
it was easier to talk your way out of it. But
mm-hmm,
now it has become the norm. And many people may not see it, but and I don't want them to happen at all. But with each one that's happening, it's getting harder and harder for the guilty culprits to get off.
mm-hmm.
They're losing their jobs. They're going to jail. So I knew what I was thinking when I asked the question, but I wanted to ask because I wanted anyone watching to hear what your perspective on that was.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to get to. I got some statements and questions up there. Something that was said earlier came from you, Tim, and I've heard this from people who are no longer friends with me on Facebook when Trump was in office. Because y'all know when Trump was in office, I kept something on Facebook. I thought you were better than that. Better than what?
What they were saying was they thought I was better because they thought I hadn't called out people for rioting and looting and things, and now I was calling out people for rioting and looting the Capitol. That
Understand that
that's what
that's but
that's
that
what we're
that
talking about.
I'm not talking about your particular situation.
Mm-hmm.
I thought you were better than that. Better than what? What is that? When they tell me that because I put stuff up there, what is like in general? The first thing they say is, "I thought you were better than that." What makes me worse than that because I'm calling this person out? What makes me worse than
You're
that
right.
because I'm calling that person out? So, and you guys may not have an answer, and that's fine. It's almost a rhetorical thinking question. I thought you were better than that. Better than what? What makes me better than this, and what makes me worse than this?
Mm-hmm.
And I never can get an answer from that. They just, they do what the Republicans do. They
Well,
go on to something else.
if you want the honest opinion, it was
Mhm.
I don't care. I am who I am. That's just the plain truth. I truly don't care. I'm gonna
Yes, and
be me and do the work. And the one thing I want to say about that is, even though we had different political beliefs, this person is a nice person, and
mhm,
I know that. And when
mhm,
I called him out, he actually said, "You're right. I'm sorry." So, in that, let me make sure I put that out there. But
mhm,
and I don't think it's a Republican Democrat thing, because honestly, when the orange one was in office, I never considered him a Democrat. He was a demagogue. I mean, a Republican. He was a demagogue, a dictator. That's the way I looked at it, because I know a lot of good Republicans. We just happen to disagree about politics, who definitely didn't like what the orange one was doing. Let me say
that's
it
true.
that way.
That's true. I should
So
call them Trumpsters.
yeah, that's what I want to say. Is
Mhm,
I when I think what this person was talking about is, why didn't I call out the looting and stuff before, when I did?
mhm,
Because we also know that when Black Lives Matter, there was white people showing up, breaking windows and stuff, sneaking
mhm,
in, because it happened right here in Raleigh and was documented.
mhm, mhm,
That's
mhm,
let's call that out and tell the
mhm.
truth and shame the devil. So,
Right.
that's
Yeah.
just the way it is.
Well, the rebuttal was the people who broke into the Capitol were BLM people in
Mm-hmm.
disguise. Now, let me tell y'all something. I'm aware of a lot of stuff, but I ain't putting no MAGA hat on my head and or holding a Confederate flag in my hand to prove nothing. I promise you, you don't have to worry about that. Now, getting to my mama's up here. Mama, did you call Dad to find out what he wanted? My mama's up here, and she
Hey,
said,
mama.
"Yeah,
Hey, mama.
y'all speak to mama." When she said back to January 6th, she said when she protested, and my mama protested back in the 60s, and let me see, yeah, back in the early 60s, she protested. She said, when I protested, I went to jail. They took over the Capitol and went home.
Mm-hmm.
And I totally agree with her because, okay, yes, you're right. They shouldn't have looted the targets and the auto zones if it was done by whoever.
Mm-hmm.
But the Capitol building has been here for 200 years, and there are documents in the Target ain't got nothing in there that they ain't made 10,000 copies of to distribute around the stores in this country. There's stuff in the Capitol that cannot be replaced. And in fact, when they broke in, they were looking for the ballots. That's what
They
they
were
were looking
looking for
for. And
people.
with that
Y'all,
too,
come on. They were
the
looking
people
for
and the
people.
people and those ballots that they were supposed to
They
count.
were gonna kill Nancy Pelosi.
Oh yeah, they
They
were gonna kill
were.
Pelosi.
They were.
They were gonna kill Pelosi.
Let's
So
let's verify. Target and AutoZone, whatever they were, they're not there as an act of sedition. That's the difference. And treason. You're attacking the country. You're not,
yes,
I'm not saying it's right to go out here and break into Target and take stuff. That's
right,
not what I'm saying. But there is a
right.
difference in going and breaking in Target and going and trying to break into the Capitol building, the Pentagon, the
Mm-hmm.
White House,
Mm-hmm.
going down here trying to break in the governor's mansion or the General Assembly. That's an act of sedition. I don't care what you do.
It is. It is.
It's
It
so.
is. Update for everybody watching. My mama said my dad is okay, and she told me to call him when I get offline. Okay.
Mhm.
So yes, it is. It was. But of course, there's some people that say it wasn't the worst thing in the world. That breaking in Target was worse. Target, who has insurance to cover everything that's in the store, and as I said, can replace it tomorrow. Whereas in you got the Capitol where you can't replace stuff, and you can't replace those people. But okay. Jason,
Can we talk
go
for a
ahead. Go
second
ahead.
about
Go ahead.
like just the savagery that was
Mhm,
enacted? There were
mhm.
officers, like we heard about the officers who were killed and those who lost their lives in the subsequent days, but there were officers who sustained burns, who have lost their
Mhm.
vision, who have lost limbs
Their
literally,
lives. Yep. Their
who
lives.
have some mental issues that they are going to be struggling with for the remainder of their days here on this earth behind some foolishness that happened because y'all were mad. I keep coming back to that because it is nothing more than you are mad.
Mhm.
And that to me is so asinine. It is so asinine to think that like your emotional state should be driving all of these occurrences that are
Yep.
happening in other people's lives, that are affecting
Mhm.
the nation as a whole. It's because you're mad. It's because you're scared. That's to me totally unreasonable. Totally unreasonable.
Totally. And I was gonna say that's the thing. Whatever was done to, again, and I just use those two as an example. To whatever was done to, that's what it is, to Target and all that stuff was done as a result of something that people felt was unjust. The breaking in of the Capitol was done beforehand. Like
And
you just
let's
broke in
also
there.
be clear that the looting and the breaking and those kinds of things, when people bust a shop window and go in and start taking things,
Uh-huh.
those are not people who came down there for the protest.
Right,
Those are
right,
people who came down there because there was a protest.
right,
And they
right,
are taking advantage of the situation and they are not necessarily there for the same reasons.
right.
The
Yeah.
people who circled up in point A to pray and to speak and to organize and let's get this phone chain going or let's get an email list or whatever is occurring, and then they're walking from point A to point B to take up space.
Mhm.
That's a protest. The people who find out that this is happening and show up because they need some more sneakers or they want to get a TV, those are not
Right.
the same people.
No.
And I
No,
don't
they're
think that
not.
we need to categorize them in the same group. And I think that we need to know and understand that there are some people who go down there to cause trouble intentionally, who blend in to the crowd and then do things that are untoward, just so that there will be bad press, just so that there will be negative attention.
Mhm.
And I think that there's a difference, again, in the looting that happens just sort of as part of this bubble of activity, and the concerted effort and the strategic manner in which people were called to
Mm-hmm.
a specific location on January 6th
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
and given orders, given permission to go forth and take the Capitol and to make it right and to do whatever it is that they decided to do. That is a totally different strategic level of thinking than we're going to get together because we need to hold space together and other things happen as a consequence of that.
Right.
There is some intention behind that that's totally different. And I don't
Right.
think that it's even fair to classify them in the same space.
Thank you
Right.
for saying what I was thinking, because that's what I was
That's
trying
it.
to say. Mhm.
Okay, so Jason Hassan,
Hey, Jason.
Hey,
uh,
Jason.
he said it makes him wonder what social studies and history teachers are or are not teaching in the classrooms. We spoke earlier about the attacks on the Capitol and the different ones, which brings up a whole nother thing with the CRT, the critical race theory, that they
Mhm.
don't want taught in schools now.
Well,
Well, let's
so,
Uh,
be
okay.
honest. They're not even teaching civics anymore. They don't even know the way governments are formed anymore. Civics has been taken out of curriculums, and let's not even talk about the history that's not being taught, because we know that's not being taught, not properly, not the true history that's at, that's why I say people need to. I've always said people need to learn the history. I don't care what background you come from. You better go to the library and pull out some books and start doing things on your own. But I'm just dumbfounded at people who don't know how the government's set up. So no wonder things like this happen.
mhm.
No comment.
I'm sorry. I
I
mean,
work for
the
Wake County
truth
Public
will.
Schools. I'm going to keep my mouth closed to a degree. What I will say is the 1619 project, when that debuted, I was tremendously excited because I've known for a long time that kids are not getting a full scope of our history as a nation.
Mm-hmm.
I have known for a long time that there are certain historical figures who are uplifted and who are turned into heroes, and it's not necessarily deservedly so.
Mhm.
I've known for a long time that there is a gap in the information that our kids are getting about who we are as a nation and
Mm-hmm.
how our nation functions and why certain things are in place. Um, what I think what we've got to do, rather than relying on the state to educate the people that it they don't want us to know certain stories, rather than relying on the state, this is again where I feel like it falls to the arts to tell these stories. It falls to us as artists to bring these stories to life,
Mm-hmm.
to put these stories before the public, to educate through our art form, and stop relying. Like, everybody's got their themselves all in a knot over, the school doesn't want to teach. That's fine. If you know that information, it's your job to share that information. It's your job to educate. Stop relying on a system that does not want to do what you want it to do, and do it yourself.
Has it
Um,
has it ever done what we wanted it to do? No,
Mm-hmm.
never.
System's not designed for that. The
No,
system
it's
is
not.
designed to generate enough factory workers to keep the nation, enough farmers and factory workers to keep
Mm-hmm.
the nation moving
Mm-hmm.
functioning, right?
Right.
There
Right.
are those few, and that's why college costs what it costs now, because it was never intended for everybody. It's just,
Mm-hmm.
I'm saying, I'm okay. All right, I'm on torn.
Yeah.
I'm on torn. Um,
Yep.
there is so much in place to continue to keep the population segmented. Um, and I think that it falls along racial lines. I think it falls along gender lines. I think it falls along um, uh, uh, the lines geographically. I think there are some lines in things that are there. Um, but I think again that we've got to just not rely on the schools to do that. We have to take that into our own hands. I remember growing up, I was part of the McKnight Achievers, which was a youth organization that took in and met with young African American leaders and scholars from, I think it was from third grade all the way up through high school seniors. And we had Saturday workshops. It was almost like Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, that kind of thing. We had workshops and we traveled and um, we we were taught these lessons, not only about national figures in Black history, but we learned about people who lived right in our city who were significant. And we met those people and they came and talked to us. And it was a source of pride culturally to be a part of that organization. But it was critical work because they were meeting a need that was not being met in the schools. And um, we didn't register that there was a gap in what we were getting from school because we were getting that piece from elsewhere. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that we've got to shift and turn our focus and stop worried about what they want to give our kids in school and start giving our kids what we know they need at home and in our social spaces and through the arts. The community has to just take that up and do it. Just stop trying to rely on folks to do that.
I, I like that. I really do. And it just made me sit here and think. Growing up, it wasn't my teacher who taught me that you don't end a sentence with the preposition. It was my mother. So I already knew this
Mm-hmm.
by the time I hit fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh grade. Why did I know it? Because I would finish a sentence with a preposition and my mama would stop me immediately and tell
Thank
me
you,
the
Mama.
difference.
Well, let's address
So,
a point of privilege here because we do have children in our society and in our communities whose moms don't have that base knowledge, whose parents are not in a space where they can address those things. That's why I didn't say it's just for parents or it's just at home.
mhm,
It's got to
mhm,
be at
Mm-hmm.
home. It's got to be for the kids who don't have folks at home. It's got to be at church or their religious place. It's got to be at the mosque. It's got to be in the synagogue. It's got to be wherever they are attending religious instruction. If they're not getting it there, then they've got to get it with their sports teams. Okay. Y'all can take 10 minutes while y'all are at AAU and talk about athletes who are leaders in social justice or who have gone on to do great things. That's not a difficult thing. There are little things that these kids can get from different places in the arts. Kids taking dance lessons. There are things that they can get from their instructors there. We've got to attack this from multiple angles. We're waiting for the school to do it, and they're not going to. They don't want to. That's not their priority. They have too many
mhm,
other things to do. They have tests to
Mm-hmm.
give,
mhm.
right? So
And
rather than making our children better people, like let's
yeah,
refocus
yeah.
and just
And
let's do that.
I was gonna say you said it, and I was thinking in our theaters, in our camps, and
Mm-hmm.
In our performances. Um,
yes,
when we are performing significant works, we've got to reach out to the community and be cognizant of who needs to see this work. It's
Mm-hmm.
not
hmm,
always for the I call them the artsy fartsies. It's not
Mm-hmm.
always
yeah,
just for the artsy fartsies to come out and have a good
Mm-hmm.
time. Sometimes
hmm,
these works are politically driven. Sometimes they are
hmm,
socially driven. And we need to create space and create equity to ensure that the children who need to be inspired by the figure that this play was written about can come and see that, or the playwright, so that the folks who might not hold those same beliefs have an opportunity to see a commonality with somebody that they wouldn't have thought they had one with on stage. They've got to, we as the keepers, as the gatekeepers of art, we are also the gatekeepers of society. And we have to do a very, very careful examination of what we're presenting and who is able to see it and how we can get it in front of the right people so that we can pull the society forward. It doesn't happen a different way. It doesn't happen with the same folks sitting there every time.
Go ahead, Mo.
I was just gonna ask, because this is a big thing with me this past year, is what kind of theater do we present over the broad spectrum of addressing what goes on right now, moving forward into the future, and also I'm all about honoring the past. So, because like you said, they're not getting it in schools. They don't know their history. So the big thing I'm trying to find is, where is the balance? What do we as artists and leaders in the community, and I've talked to several leaders, how do we move forward and do it so that it's done correctly and not, I feel like I know I have been trying to do it for some time, and I'm not jumping on the bandwagon simply because the Black Lives Matter movement has just happened. I want to think, and I'm not lauding myself, but I think my track record proves I've been trying to tell stories all along. So my question to any arts person out there is, how do we put this under an umbrella and move forward and tell the future stories, the current stories, as well as telling the ones in the past? And I'm not just talking about BIPOC people, I'm talking about the LGBTQ community, stories about women, women's issues. How do we move forward? I'm sorry, Juan, it's I'm the host now.
Y'all know I don't care about that. Because guess what? I'm here to answer it. So yeah, table's turning. We can switch chairs. I get on the couch now. You get behind the desk. It's already being done, and I think because you're on the inside, you don't see it as much as others may see it. But I sat and had a long conversation with Heather the other day over at RLT. And we talked about theater in this area. Now, when I got in theater, are you drinking out of a Lysol can?
It's a cup.
It's a cup.
It's a cup.
Quarantine 2020. I like that.
You remember, he told us all we needed was a little Lysol and some bright lights to cure COVID.
My whole head hurt. Mama, help. Anyway,
my mama
moving
went
on.
out and had these made.
Oh God. So, we were talking about like when I got into theater, Patrick had just gotten to RLT, and I did Miranda and Brother Win, and what I saw was already changed. Now, Tim, you've been in it longer than we have, and we know that theater. Yeah, because it's time for us to be on theater. So anyway, you know that theater was a good old boys network. It's a good old white man's network. You can go in some of these theaters, these older theaters, and look at their pictures on the wall of past plays, and you're always going to find that one black play, The Wiz. The rest of the pictures are not going to have any black people in it. We are already doing that for better or worse. We have theater companies that are catered to women. We don't just have that one black play at every theater. There are, like, theaters just reopened, and already the Mountaintop has been done. American Sons is going to be done. Pearl is going to be done. All this stuff is all going to be done in 1 year, already planned. There have been LGBTQ plays done, not just at Interact, but at other places. It's already happening. This is not you, as the commercial used to say, this is not your grandmother's theater. This is not your mother's theater. This wasn't happening 10 years ago. And even though I wasn't in theater, I know for a fact. Okay, first of all, Heather and Patrick are at Raleigh Little Theater.
That's
One is
significant.
Latino. One is
That's
Latino,
significant.
and Shonda's on the board at RLT. One is Latino, one is a female. Neither position that either one of them hold was held by either of them or their kind 8 years ago. It wasn't. And it had been like that since 1936.
Yep.
So we are moving. It's just you may not see it as quickly as you would like, but I will tell you, this is probably one of the separations with a Black person or a person that outwardly, is a person of color. And for those of y'all watching, we say outwardly because Tim is Lumbee Indian. He got some Lumbee Indian in. He got some Indian in his family.
No,
Native.
No, I
It's
don't.
native.
I just had my ancestry done.
Oh, it's not in there anymore? Who took it out?
Put it back right now.
But
right now.
I am a total of 18% African. So.
Oh, okay. 18. What part? Look, what part? Okay.
I can show you sometime. I wasn't going to say that on here, but I mean that's. I mean, we'll just go on and say I have learned a lot from my ancestry, and I did it this year to figure it all out. So
okay, well, good. But nevertheless, like Shonda and I, we're patient because we've talked to our parents and our grandparents, and we know. Is that Corey standing over there? I should have known the way you look.
I'm live, babe.
She live. We live, Corey. Don't you say nothing that's wrong. We live.
He came to get some nuggets for the baby.
Get the nuggets.
It's all right. Get the nuggets. Go on to the back.
We've heard all these years is that change is slow, but what you do with it is you make it steady. You're not going to change it overnight. We can't make these changes. Again, Raleigh Little Theater is the oldest theater here. It's been there almost 100 years. It took 70 plus to get Heather and Patrick in there. You can't change that overnight. You can't.
But I think the thing is now that it's like a paddle boat. Now that big old wheel is spinning, it's going to go faster and faster. It will not take another 70 years to see significant progress towards our next target. It will not take that same amount of time and energy to get to that next landing. I think that what we have to do is recognize that there is progress. But I think that we, like Juan was saying, we have to be good stewards of that progress and ensure that we don't now sit back and get comfortable. Well, we're not, it's not one show a year anymore. Now it's 3 shows and, and that's just okay. I think that we have to come to a point where we really are thinking carefully about, as Tim put it, the stories that we're telling on these stages and what we are putting before our audiences. And when it comes to the canon, I'm one of those people. Rodgers and Hammerstein is problematic. I'll be one of the first ones to tell you that. But that's the soundtrack that I grew up singing, and it sits well in my voice. I can sing you almost any of the leading ladies from Rodgers and Hammerstein. Do you think I will ever play them on stage? It's highly unlikely unless some director has some visionary, futuristic, I don't know, alternative past, whatever thing going on. It's highly unlikely that will be a possibility for me. Does that mean that I never want to see a Rodgers and Hammerstein done on stage? No, they're still great stories. They are
Mm-hmm.
love stories. They are classics. They are things from a different time and place. And I think that we as humans should be intelligent enough and open enough to appreciate that this is a story about this once upon a time.
Mm-hmm.
We should be able to look at that and see that and honor that for what it is. And now let's do a story that's relevant to who and what we are
Mm-hmm.
now.
But
Mhm.
I have heard a lot of things going on within the past year about we shouldn't tell these stories because they're triggering. Or, and I'm not talking about BIPOC, I'm talking about, let's just say for the LGBTQ community, there are stories out there that they say shouldn't be told because they're triggering. And there's, like you said, Rogers and Hammerstein, Carousel, he's a wife beater. You know, that's triggering. But at the same time, it is something that goes on in society. And I'm glad you said we need to look at it through those lenses. And people don't want to look at things through lens anymore. They want that sitting in the artistic director's chair. Those are the kinds of things that I think about.
Mm-hmm.
And when I put
Because
together
there is a
this,
balance to be struck there. If you
exactly.
have a community that is telling you that this is harmful, this is triggering,
Mm-hmm.
and we would rather not see this on your stage, that is definitely something to be considered.
Mm-hmm.
But I also don't feel like we need to cancel the last 50 years worth of American theater and try to start from scratch. I think that there are ways and places, and again, this is where the education piece comes in. If
Mm-hmm.
you're doing a good job of educating your audience about what they're about to see or what they have just seen, if you're bringing in a decent dramaturg, if you're bringing in local historians, if you're bringing in folks who have a significant tie to that time or place or person,
Mm-hmm.
whatever that adventure is, that's that story that's being told on stage. If you can use that as a tool of education, then I feel like we may need to see a wife
Mm-hmm.
beater on stage, because that illuminates for us who we don't want to be,
Can
Exactly.
I can
and
I
that allows us to grow.
let me say something.
Uh-oh.
I think it's yeah, I'm right there right now. I think it's selfish to say that you don't want to see something on stage because it's triggering. But you know what? Maybe if you see it and you know your neighbor went through it, the next time you see your neighbor going through it, you'll know what it is and you can do something to stop it because you know what the symptoms are of being a
Mm-hmm.
wife of being an abused wife. You know what the symptoms are of feeling racism. But we are in a country that wants to do this.
because
That's why they don't
because
want stuff.
empathy hurts.
Right.
It hurts to build
Mm-hmm.
that scab. It hurts to peel that thing off and let that
Mhm.
tender place get some air, but it doesn't heal otherwise.
That's right.
That's exactly right. And I have said some of the plays I have done, I don't want any black people there. I don't. I didn't want any black people at Bourbon on the border. Or Lord Jesus, Bourbon on the border. You know
Have you
why I
had
didn't
some
want any black?
bourbon tonight?
Yes, I have. Mama, don't tell my mama. I'm drinking something right now. No, I don't drink bourbon. I don't drink. Yeah, I had some Lysol. I didn't want black people at Bourbon on the border. You know why? Because they already know that story. They know what that's about. You know who I want to see it? Some folk who are swearing down that racism doesn't exist anymore, or racism only existed in the minds of black people. I want them to see that story. That's who I want there. So yeah, everything needs to be told in theater. That's one of the mediums that you can definitely do that. And there are some black people who have said we need to stop telling or talking about black racism in the past. No, we don't. Because as both of y'all stated tonight, we're starting to repeat some stuff. We're starting to repeat some stuff.
Mm-hmm.
To allow Trump to do all that he did, we're repeating some stuff.
And to make excuses for him as he did it.
Right. We're repeating some stuff. So you know what? You need to understand and know. I've also heard folks say, well, why don't you stop talking about slavery? And I would this would be my response to anybody that says that. You're talking about your heritage and history. I'm talking about mine. This is the heritage and the history that this country allowed me to have. So if I'm going to talk about my history before 1865, I'm gonna have to talk about some slaves because that's the only history I have. So to not want to hear this in the theater.
Well, okay. Well, let me I'm raising my hand. Yes, slavery is a part of our history, but it is just that, a part of our history. Our history reaches beyond slavery.
Mm-hmm.
Now we have to go to a different time and place. And the other thing for people to consider and remember is that history beyond slavery, there was an intentional effort to strike that from our memories, to strike that from our very DNA, to strike that from who we are as a people. And for us to have that detachment, right? For anybody who does their DNA test and discovers they've got Scottish heritage, well, that's no problem. It makes sense. Well, the Scotch came here and they landed here and they did this and and you can trace it all and it all makes sense. That ability was taken from us, and it was done intentionally. It was done so that we could not have a sense of self and a sense of culture and a sense of awareness. Now, that which we have, we fought for. And being a Gullah woman, okay, my people from Richland, South Carolina, and the Gullah Geechee people have a tighter tie than most. Hey, Tiana, that's my cousin. We ain't figured out how yet, but her people from somewhere in the same neck of the woods, and they got some of the same names. We haven't figured it out yet. We'll get around to that. But the Gullah Geechee people have a tighter connection because they were isolated, they were insulated, and they were able to maintain and pass down what they had in a much more coherent way than some other African American communities. And so when I talk about my history, I have to talk about slavery, yes, but we also need to begin to discover and reclaim some of the things from before slavery and honor the resilience and the strength of the Africans who survived the Middle Passage, who survived enslavement, and who went on to give us whatever it was they had to give us. I think that's one of those things. And it's hard to tell an African story as an African American woman. Let me put that there too. Like, I really have to look at it carefully and you might as well ask me to play somebody. Well, let's keep with Scottish since that's what popped out of my head. You might as well ask me to play a Scottish role because it has the same sense of detachment and foreignness to me because I've lived here and been raised in a very specific Americanized with Americanness sort of as the pinnacle of culture, right? So I'm having to do the same research about specific African countries and nations if I want to portray an African woman. My brown skin is not enough. My kinky hair is not enough to just do that. I'm going to have to really get there and understand where they come from and the tribal nature of it. And there's a lot of digging that has to happen. And that's not just for a portrayal on stage. That's something that I'm having to rediscover for myself as a person.
Well,
so
look, I want to say this. And I did kind of stop at slavery when I was talking about my history and everything. But something you said, Shonda, about they tried to hide that from us for so long.
And I think about it. They took it.
Yeah, well, yeah, you're right. They took it. And I think about that when I hear the statement, not all the time, but sometimes when I hear the statement African American, I think about that because there's a period between Africa and where we are now that you literally try to erase. Like we have some we have some very prominent ancestors who were slaves, who did the, who were did the whole Alex Haley thing and Roots thing, but we don't know anything about them. And to me, where the brainwash comes is there are some black people that are like, I don't want to know anything about slavery. Tell me about Africa. But what about your ancestors who came over here, well, forced or otherwise, who came over here and survived these 400 years so you can be where you are now? You want to know about them. And I don't think that is, I think we've been brainwashed to not think of that. So for some reason, when a white person starts talking about history, they go 1900s, 1800s, 1700s, and so forth. When we talk about history, we go 1900s, Africa. That's where we go. We go 1900s and Africa. Well, 1800s, 1700s, 1600s. Alex Haley, when I first saw Roots back in the 70s, I was just like, how did he find all that out? How did he know that? Because, and Tim, you were talking about doing your ancestry thing. I haven't done it yet because I'm scared. I'm scared I'm going to go to do it, and it's going to stop at the early 1900s. That's it.
It won't.
I can't.
It won't.
I hope it doesn't. But well, and to be I don't even need it for the early 1900s because my great grandmother didn't die until 1999, so I know all that. But and it maybe it won't, but it's just that fear that it will, because I don't know that stuff. So I get what you're saying. I do get what you're saying, Shonda. But but you also kind of agree with me that we don't, it's been stolen from us. So no, I'm not happy that my ancestors were slaves, but they were slaves. So can I know about it, please?
I think we have to choose to, in our storytelling, we have to choose those stories which, like I said, uplift the resilience of those people. I can't even tell you what I watch random documentaries on YouTube sometimes. It's a thing. But one of them talked about the fact that, they didn't just need workers all of a sudden and decide, well, we'll get them from here. That there was a war that we have not been told about, that we do not have the history of, and that those people initially were taken as prisoners of war. Now, when you reframe it that way, when you reframe enslaved Africans as prisoners of war, it forces you to look at how they survived differently. It forces you to look at what they endured differently. If you think about a POW from any other era in American history, they get all kinds of reverence, and rightfully so. They deserve it because they have endured some terrible circumstances on behalf of their nation. And I think that when you reframe slavery and stop seeing it as a shame, because there was resistance, there was resilience, and those people were put through more than I think I could bear in my 21st century mind and body. I just don't think I could do it. I'm just be upfront. And so when we give that kind of respect to the story of slavery, it's not just singing and dancing, shucking and jiving Black folks on a plantation. And when we also think about where some of those characterizations come from and how that leads into minstrelsy and how all of those things are a construct that were developed to ensure that there was a certain perception of Black and brown people post-enslavement that would keep them in a lower place, that would keep them from achieving high rank in society. When you think about those kinds of things, if you are, again, being careful to educate your public and educate your audiences, then those stories become, again, much more than just shucking and jiving black folks on a plantation, singing a hymn, singing a spiritual. And they become stories about people who survived, stories about people who overcame, stories about people who chose joy in the face of everything else they were faced with.
Mm-hmm. Oh, now let me get to. I'm sorry, I got to do this. Shonda, you
Please
said this,
talk to
the
Jade, because
singing.
he is. Please
Yes,
talk to
he done.
Jade.
Yes, God. But
Hey,
let me
Jade.
before I get to
Kiss,
Jade.
kiss them babies for me, Jade.
Uh, I got to do this because you talked about the singing and the. I'm building me a home. Okay, I'm done.
I'm building me a home.
Okay, let's go. All right, so Jade said this change is slow because the highest position. Going back to the theater positions, mostly the artistic directors and the executive producers. The change is slow because the highest positions are held and passed on to their own people with familiar ways of thinking. The changes that are more available, like RIT, is because people who hold those positions are all older and retiring soon, if they haven't already retired. And that is the truth. I have seen it in several different places. I answer that one too. I've seen it in several different places where some of these old board members, the Good Old Boys Network, they're retiring. And I think what they're most upset about is they tried to find their predecessors and they couldn't. And they're not happy because the stuff is starting to change. In order for those companies, in order for they must, they know they must. And Jade said, in order for those companies to survive, they know they must change. They may not want the change, but they have no choice because we are in this age where cancel culture is a thing. And my philosophy on the cancer culture is the natives' culture was canceled, and my ancestors' culture was canceled when they were taken from Africa. So don't ask me, do I know what cancel culture is? Because I do, because I'm here. So not upset that I'm here, but I'm here. I know what I know what canceling a whole culture is, because I don't know my African culture. I don't even know my American culture because I don't know the slavery part. Moving on. Getting to Aya, who was supposed to have been up here tonight.
Hey, Aya.
Hey, Aya.
I was gonna say, speak to your daughter, Tim. When we were talking just a few minutes ago about blacks and our ancestry, she was saying they weren't just white persons during the Middle Ages. And Shonda, when you were talking about the prisoners, her son said there was a whole lot of prisoners of war. Not all Africans that were brought over here. In the beginning, it was probably for being prisoners of war. But once they realized, okay, we can work them like we work these mules and these horses out here, their thought changed. And Jarius, I wish I could hear you singing "Wade in the Water." Anyway, getting back to theater.
Let me talk to Jade right quick. Let me talk to my friend Jade.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so Jade, you're absolutely correct. I think that there are positions in theater. Here's the thing. In recent years, I've discovered that I probably became a theater teacher because nobody told me I could be an artistic director. I didn't know that was a thing for me. I thought you could either be on Broadway or you might get lucky and be one of the few black girls at Disney dancing. That might be a thing. But nobody ever told me that I could be an arts administrator. Nobody ever told me that I could be an artistic director. Any of those higher level theater jobs, there was simply not even an awareness of access for me, number one. Number two, I had to sit down and have a long, difficult conversation with my family when I dropped the bomb that I was going to be a theater major to begin with, because you are supposed to be a doctor, a lawyer, an engineer, a nurse, a teacher. Okay, you have a certain number of things that are considered safe professions that are going to earn you money and be respectable in the community. And you could be a preacher if you're a boy. Okay, all of that. But when I decided that I wanted to be a theater major, that education part was the part that made my family go, okay, all right. but it's a theater teacher, so we're all right. Okay. Um, I don't think that historically we have encouraged children of color to pursue the arts professionally. And by professionally, I mean in all the many very, very lucrative positions that there are in theater organizations. Um, I think that that's something that we need to work on, because kids don't have to just be talented on stage or just be talented musically or just be talented in terms of visual art. There are all kinds of ways of being involved in a theater professionally that will make you a living. And none of those were afforded to me. So if we're talking about my generation, there might be a few um, folks who have come up the ladder of success in theaters and are now in positions that are decision making and weight bearing. But preceding my generation, that's pretty rare. It's going to be rare that you even have people on that level who can decide what the season is going to be, who can decide what stories are going to be told, who can decide how we're going to cast and put these stories on stage. There are very, very few instances of that. So Jade is absolutely correct. There have not historically been people at that level. I think that is changing rapidly, and I'm glad to see that happening. I think that it's important that at every level throughout a theater, there is representation of all kinds of people, because that is how you catch things that would otherwise slip through the cracks, right? That's how you say, somebody, you roll out the season and somebody says, ooh, hey, maybe we should discuss this further, or maybe we should talk about that further. Little things that come up along the way. If you don't have representation throughout the ranks of an organization, they get missed. And that's how you end up with faux pas and hurt feelings and things not going right.
And
So that's something for organizations to pay attention to.
it takes a long time to build that up also.
You know what? And that leads me to my question for you, Tim. Okay, so um, for those who are at home watching, ever since the first torn, um, some of the theaters in Wake County started meeting, and they meet on a pretty regular basis. They don't meet as much now as they used to, but they don't have to, because they met and they started to make change. Um, but Tim, you were asking earlier, which was kind of what started all this. You were asking about that change and maybe if enough was being done. What do you think that you're moving at a good pace with the things that you and some of the other theaters are doing?
I think having started let me tell the story. When I first started at Interact, there was no people of color, BIPOC people of any kind on the board when I first started.
Mm.
So that was one of the goals that I started, and told the board we have to get representation. We have to tell stories other than the stories that were being told. And it took a long time. I took advice from several different people who were leaders in the community, with the Arts Commission, the Arts Council, other artistic directors, trying to figure out how to do these things. And so where I am, there's only two staff positions at Interact. So I depend a lot on the board. And yes, I'm very happy with where the board is at Interact now. We're over half of BIPOC people, LGBTQ people, women, everything like that. Since I've been there, there has been more women directors for all of our shows, and it has been women of all colors. So when I know RLT does a lot, and there's some other theaters who are starting to do the work, but you can look at some of the boards, in town, and you make your own decisions. Are they trying to do the work? I'm not calling anybody out, but there are some who is starting to do the work, and there's been a lot done on these Zoom meetings and uh, doing BIPOC training, diversity training, equity training. And when I say equity, I'm not just talking about the color of people's skin. We're talking about the LGBTQ community, telling women's stories, women issues, telling stories from the trans community. Those are things, and getting that representation on the board. And, I know people are doing the work, and some of it's slower than in other ways. So, yes, are we where we were 2 years ago? No. But are we where we need to be? No. The work has to continue.
Yeah, it does. It does. And it's funny because sometimes I hear, and I haven't, not from you, but just from other theater people and other theater companies. They'll talk about a different company and say, well, we were doing these type plays before, and now that company just jumped on the bandwagon and they're trying to copy us. Good, good. That's how it needs to happen. That okay. So this other company didn't have any BIPOC people on their board. Now they do, because they don't want to be left out, or they don't want to be looked upon as bad. As Jay said, they may not want to make that change, but they're going to have to.
Mm-hmm.
So fine, I'm fine with that. If they want to be copycats, okay, good. Now let's make sure they're being copycats for the right reasons. Don't just throw a black
There
play
you
in there
go.
because you want a black
There you
play.
go.
Now,
rather, don't just throw a black person on their board and then ignore everything that they have to say,
right,
or make them feel unwelcome, or continue to operate in ways that serve white supremacy.
Right.
Right.
Oops.
Absolutely.
So now that's where we have to monitor what's going on. But the good thing about that is we've gotten to a place where I can open up my mouth and say something without necessarily being a fear of of the good old boys network telling me I can never do theater again. And so I think in the past year, you guys have done an amazing job. And I told someone else before that this platform here and this mouth, other things that I've said outside of this platform, I'm not trying to be the leader because I can't. I literally can't. There's like 7 theaters that I work with. I can't do that. But what I can do is make sure that you guys are armed with what I feel like is the proper things to do to carry the torch on. That's one of the other problems. When Martin died, there was no one to carry the torch the way he carried it. And the falsehood that we've been giving is that he was this righteous, a peaceful person. He was not. Martin would get in that hind part if he had to, but he had a strategy about what he did, and he could sit down and think about what the circumstances were. No one is trying to do that anymore. And I applaud the theaters that are doing it because you're thinking on those lines. What is the strategy? You know what? We're not going to do this, and this because this might happen. But we are going to do this because we know this is going to happen. And we're going to go ahead and do it anyway because we want to turn some heads. And so to your earlier question, you are doing more than enough. You just don't realize it because you're on the inside. Go ahead.
Here's my biggest fear, and being plain spoken as I am, I want people to do it for the right reasons and not tokenism. That's as plain and simple as I can put it.
Well, you know what? Go ahead.
Because I care about several people in the community, and I've had this conversation with one before, to the point of getting tears and crying. It makes me angry to think some people are being used, and that's where I draw the line.
Well, and let me say this: I'm not stupid.
I know.
By any means necessary. By any means necessary.
That wasn't Martin.
That was Malcolm. That was Malcolm. Um, and I know when I am being used as a token. And I also know that somebody has to be the Hattie McDaniel and go ahead and play the maid and go on with the wind so that the Oscar can be obtained and that 100 years from now, Shonda can get her Oscar. Or 100 years from then, Shonda can get her Oscar. So I don't mind that because first of all, I'm gonna get paid. Somebody gonna put some money in my pocket. That's one of the differences. I ain't Motisa, you're gonna have to pay for this tea. That's the first thing. But it's the manner in which I go about being that token. I could show that I have the talent to do what is needed, and possibly have the people or persons that hired me say, wait a minute, they actually have some talent. I wonder if there's some more Black people that have talent. Let's check
That's
and
where
see.
I was headed. You know, it seems to me, and this, I joked about this with another girlfriend recently, that there is a spreadsheet that has like the names of 15 Black people on it, and those same 15 Black people pop up everywhere. Now, don't get it twisted. I like working. I'm happy to get the call. And when I say working, I mean on stage, I mean backstage, I mean in the design team, in the production team, I mean on the board. I'm happy to get the calls and I'm happy to do the work. But I have some other friends who are capable of doing the work too. And I think that and I think that this comes to the communities of color. We have got to do a better job of uplifting our friends and associates who can come on board with us, because that spreadsheet with those 15 names on it, needs to be 30 names by the end of the year. And it needs to be 45 names shortly thereafter. And it needs to be 65 names when they look up again. And by bringing more people into the fold, I think that, again, because here's the other thing, Black people are not a monolith. Not all Black people are alike. We think differently and hold different opinions, and we fall on a spectrum as to how conservative maybe is not really the word, but how conservative or radical we are when it comes to certain issues and topics. We have different thresholds for talent. There's a certain number that you're going to call me to sing, and there's another certain number that you're going to call Aya to sing, and there's another certain number that you're going to call Tiana for, and there's another certain number that you're going to call Mama Tina for. Like there's a spectrum. We have different voices, different appearances, different styles, all of that. The same when we're doing the work on the other side of the table. We have lots of different types of gifts and talents. Mama Tina has a head for numbers, and like she can spot it out. So if you are working on something financial, like it makes sense to have that particular person of color, that particular woman of color on your team. And the same can be said of lots of different people. And so I think that we have to do a really good job of saying, you know what, I'm available, but you know who else you could call?
Yeah. Well, and Tim, when we had this conversation the first time, and I told you, I already know there's some places where I know I'm the token. I knew this going. Okay, acting, I already knew what was going on, but sound design for the first, let me see, 14, 15, 16, 17. When did I start sound? 17. For the first 4 years of me being in theater, I never saw anybody Black on the crew. I never saw a Black person on the crew. Never. So I thought of me first. And I said, the first advantage is I'm local. Sound designers aren't usually local. So I'm local. So if something needs to be changed or done, it's just a matter of me going to the theater that the next day while nobody's there making the change. I'm black. These theaters are already getting minority scholarships. Well, guess what? Now they can get one because they got somebody black on the crew.
Mm-hmm.
I am not stupid. But since you are getting these scholarships, you can already put some money in my pocket. Oh, I'm not going to be there.
Mm-hmm. I guess
Eh, Go
what
ahead.
gets me is I know I'm an empath. I know
Mhm,
that. And I don't care what color somebody is. If I care about them, I hate to see anybody being used. And you asked me about what other theaters were doing. I think they are doing the work. And I don't know anybody who is not doing the work in the right way. I want to say that right now. It's
mhm,
not that there's
mhm,
somebody out there who's not doing the work. I just
mhm,
want the people who are doing the work to be doing it for the right reasons and not because they can get the grant or they need a face on their board. They really want the input from the board members. I encourage anybody who, who comes on our board, speak up. Let's hear your opinion.
mhm.
Give me your opinion about the shows on the season. When I chose this season that we have right now, every show, with the exception of one, can be any color it can be a BIPOC person, it can be LGBTQ person. If they come and audition for the show, there are no restrictions except for one show. And what is that show? The Color Purple. Everybody else can be any race they want to be. So,
Well,
you know,
um,
Can
I
we
and
also be careful to include people with disabilities of all
yes.
kinds in these conversations? Because there is there is a lack of diversity in that realm as well.
Mm-hmm.
So just
yes, there is. Yes,
we'll
there is.
fold those friends in with everybody else.
And I'm
Exactly.
glad you said that because in our cast camp, we do have two students with one with learning, one with physical disability this year in our cast camp situation. So you're absolutely right. And I should have
Well,
included them also.
I say this, and I think this is part of my upbringing. It's not always about how I get into the situation. It's what I do when I get there and how I can use the
Mm-hmm.
situation to benefit me. So again, I understand what you're saying and I appreciate it. And I think it probably bothered you so much because that's not, that's not something that would happen to you. That would not be a reason for someone to involve you in something. You're right.
Mm-hmm.
It would be a reason for them to want to involve me in it. But what my what my mom has taught me is okay, they put you in it because you're black. Now what are you going to do with it?
Mm-hmm.
When it's time for you to leave, is it on your resume? Can you move on up to where
Mm-hmm.
somebody is going to get you because it's you and not black? So it has to start somewhere. Somebody has to make that first move. And who knows, maybe there's another black sound designer who I can work with, teach them everything I know, which actually those are in work, those are I'm planning that. And they can start getting jobs locally
Mm-hmm.
because of the fact that I was willing to go through, okay, yeah, I know y'all only got me here because I'm black. I already know it. But here you go. This is what I'm capable of and what I can do. Now I will say this. I'm gonna say this to the black folk. Something Shonda said earlier. Can we recommend black folk for stuff? Y'all gonna be mad at me, black folk. Let me look at the actual camera. Y'all gonna be mad at me, black folk. Some of y'all ain't recommending for nothing because y'all on CPT. Now, a lot of folks that's looking at this ain't gonna know what CPT is. Y'all on color people time. Rehearsal started at 6:30. You don't show up to 7:15, and you ain't got an excuse for why you 45 minutes late. I ain't recommending you for nothing. My mama's watching. Okay, I'm through. Let's just keep it real. Let's just keep it real. Now, Shonda, you on mute.
Shonda, you're muted.
How you
Can
mute
I just
yourself?
say that timeliness is a construct of white supremacy to begin with? Like in Africa, we operate on like when the sun get about here is when we'll start. And so I'm just saying linear time is a thing that people of color struggle with for a reason. Like it didn't come from nowhere.
Right.
Now, with that said, there is an understanding that we live in a Western civilization, a Western culture who upholds Eurocentric values, and that clock is one of them. And so they're just it. if there's anybody watching who has not yet read the document, We See You, White American Theater, please go download that document, read it. It will help you understand a lot of what Jade was saying. My friend Jade was talking about some of the things there. We've covered some of those topics. That document is pivotal. If there is if there are any theater makers in the area who have still not read that document, like everybody else has been in it for a year now. We've been dissecting that thing and looking at it line by line to begin to understand the nature of theater, the way that it is set up in our Americanized society, and the nature of race and how it is in direct conflict with the nature of how our theaters are set up, and why there is a list of demands, why there are specific changes that Black artists are calling for, in order to bring theaters into a place where equity is the norm and not something that we have to work for or strive for or practice or pull in. There is a movement that is looking to reconstruct just simply the way that we make our art, because the way that we have been doing it innately places Black and brown people and othered people, not other, but othered people, anybody who is made to feel outside of the norm, it puts us at a disadvantage. And so that's a document that it deserves your attention. It's lengthy, but take a couple of evenings and have you a glass of wine and dig into it.
A month, dig into it a month, because it demands that respect.
Okay, and it's something I didn't know. Okay, I'm happy yeah.
Wow, I thought you
Juan,
had seen it by
read
now.
the first 3 pages and then call me.
Oh Lord, no. See, I told you a lot of stuff. I just be running stuff out of here.
But
Stuff I say.
I will say, as a director,
Mm-hmm.
taking the artistic director stuff off and putting the hat on as a director, that's the only pet peeve I have, is people showing up late. And the reason is, and I was taught this, I don't care who it is, if you're late, multiply each minute you're late by the number of people in there that's waiting on you. That's how much time you've wasted. And that, that's the only pet peeve I have when I'm directing. But I also don't waste other people's time. If you're not needed, you're not called. I
Yeah.
don't have people sitting around. And I think that is a problem sometimes when directors, they think that they can just draw people in and have them sit there and use them when they need them. No, I have come prepared, and I expect, you're there from this time to this time, and then you can leave. And I think that has been a problem in the past when it comes to theater and people using people's time.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So,
Right. Okay. Yeah. Well. Wow. I didn't think we were going to be up here as long as we are, but I forgot the 2 people I had up here.
what you
Y'all gonna. Yeah.
say?
Uh
Is that,
huh.
I don't
Yeah.
know how to, Mama Tim, how do you feel about that? Because I'm
Uh
not
huh.
I ain't
sure.
stuck. I ain't. I can call Juan's mama. I'm a mama to Juan too. That's all I have to do. But Shonda, I'm
And
glad you said that. Me and you need to get together and talk about the document, because there's a lot of questions. We didn't, we need to get together again and talk about the document.
well,
It's juicy.
I've got some reading
Hmm.
to do. So, yes, okay. That's something I knew nothing about. I want to say I am glad that theater is opening back up. How do you? This is kind of off topic, but with everything that's happening now with this new variant, how do you guys feel about theater opening up and your capacities when you're in a theater and stuff? Tim, you first, because you're an
We have to
artistic
be
director.
we have to be very careful. Camps, because of the ages, they're coming in masked. Everybody's masked during the time of camps. I haven't had any pushback on it, and I think that when there's an Amber Alert, that's what that is. Um, because I just got it. The I think that when you start back putting people in audiences, there should be a mask policy in place, at least through January till we see what this variant is, and people have to come at their own comfort levels. I know people are still there are some people who are still scared to go to stores, and I think we as a nation, a lot of people we truly are suffering from PTSD. I heard David Henderson say that not long ago, and it's just told is the truth. And people have to go with their comfort levels. I hope people come back to theater and come and see theater, because we have an announcement coming out about something in September, and then our first show is in October. So hopefully people will come and come and audition for Young Frankenstein in August. That at least for NRAC. And I know RLT has some auditions coming up.
Yes.
Go see old What a Night at Theater Raleigh, and anything else anybody's doing. I'm just throwing it out there. I'm trying to support everybody.
Everybody.
So,
Evita's over, so you can't come see me. Shonda, what is your thoughts on going back to theater and doing that stuff?
So I'm in a unique position being the director of a high school theater program. So my guidelines are sort of set for me through Wake County public school policy. And Freddie Lee Heath, I just got to shout him out because he has been amazing throughout this pandemic, helping to guide teachers about what we can do and what we can't do, and really going to the mat for us. Because, if they let athletics do it and then they turn around and tell the arts no, then, there's an equity piece there to deal with. But Freddie Lee has really, really been helpful and supportive in terms of making sure that we're aware of what the expectations are and that we're adhering to that for the safety of ourselves and our kids. Going forward, I will, of course, continue to follow the policies given to me, but I think I'm going to err on the side of caution. So there may be some things that they say we can do that I may, wait until we see what's happening in the world before I throw myself and my kids into those situations. Because I'm aware of the fact that, we have kids who have folks in their homes with delicate immune systems, with compromised immune systems. It's not just about the kids want to do it. There's the safety of them and their families to consider. And the last thing that I want is for anybody to get sick on my watch. But we do have a full season planned. We are planning to be in person. We've got some really exciting things on the horizon, and I hope with everything in me that we can jump back into things in a much more normal way than we have experienced recently. But I don't expect that things will just magically be how they used to be. I'm still going to be fussing about washing their hands and don't touch these props, and just kind of being very, very cautious, because at the end of the day, I'm dealing with people's kids. Those are people's children, and I'm very, very sensitive to that fact. And I love them. I love my babies. And I don't want anything to happen to them. So sometimes if I proceed with caution, that's the reason why.
Well, I asked that because I just finished Evita. And that look is not for Evita itself. That look is for the 93-degree sun that we experienced.
You look bronzed. That melanin is recharged.
I can't do nothing but laugh. I can't do nothing. Nothing. I will get you later. Shut your whole mouth. The whole thing. So it was a 93-degree sun, but our capacity was 100 people. And yes, it was outside, but they were in lawn chairs, and they would group together, and it still wasn't like a long, a lot of distance between them. But I know people are ready to get back to theater, and I've seen it.
The kids are very happy to be back in camps.
Mm-hmm.
They,
So yeah.
I feel those kids who were artic, who were theater kids and art kids who didn't have their outlet, their way to express themselves. You can
Mm-hmm.
just see them thriving. They're loving being back
Mm-hmm.
in camps.
Yes. So I ask you guys that because I want people that are watching to know that, we are wanting to get back to theater, but we also, I don't drink Corona and I don't fly Delta. Yeah, that's the two. Hey, So anyway, but and A are gonna talk about bronzy.
He does.
You know
He
what?
looks
Stop it.
bronzy. It's
Stop it.
dewy.
Stop it.
All
So,
up in here. See, in here. And just here.
anyway, so this website that Shonda was talking about earlier is We See You What. We See You White American Theater. So you don't have to type out the White American Theater part. It's We See You What. And I just looked it up, and they got everything in here. You can download the text, and you can read the text. And I definitely would be doing it. We have at Beltline to Broadway, we have a July bingo contest, and you see the local theater or stream local theater. Fill out the bingo card. Whoever checks the most boxes by the end of the month will get 2 tickets to an upcoming production at Theater Raleigh. You visit the website, beltlinetobroadway.org, to download your bingo card. I do that right? Did I do that right, lady? That camera don't look as good as okay. No, it was frozen. It's freezing. That camera's freezing.
Are we good? Can you see me?
Yeah, your camera. We see you, but the camera was spotty.
We see you.
Okay, is the camera okay now?
Still a little spotty.
Calm down. All right, let me change it. You tell him we're running a TV station and he gets crazy. Okay, all right, calm down.
That one, okay, that's better. That's better. Theater on spotty cameras. Well, I want to thank you guys so much. This had to be delayed several times. That might be one of the reasons we don't have more up here. But as I stated in the beginning, literally, the 10 people I had on the very first show, 8 of them are working or they're doing something. One has moved to LA. And so it's a good thing because people are employed, but it may not look as good here, but that's okay. Cause I had the two mouths that I needed to get through the 2 hours. Yeah, I said it.
I'll get you.
And I definitely appreciate it. I'm glad that theater's back. I see a different type energy in you guys now than if I could pull up a picture from a year ago. A year ago, we were all just like, but now it's just like, okay, things are coming back, and I'm happy they are. So hopefully people watching, I can't tell you when there's going to be another torn. I hate to say it like that, but I'm working too, and I am enjoying theater. But Lauren, of course, has always got something going on. I got to do some one-on-one interviews. I will probably be interviewing Shonda because she's going to be in Pearly, and I'm going to be in Pearly. And then the director of Pearly just called me Bronzy, so I might be interviewing all of them. I'm definitely going to do some one-on-one interviews. Those are different than Torn. We don't talk about that. We talk about what you're doing in theater, what your next play is, and one of the reasons why we decided to do it the way that we're trying to do it is because usually you read a review after the first week, or in some cases the second week. And then by the time you read the review, you want to get tickets and it's sold out. So I would like to interview people before the play. Now I got to work on that because Tech Week is when when the play starts. So it's definitely kind of hard to get a director and a star out of Tech Week, but I will figure that out. Even if it has to just be a recorded thing that I do during the day. It doesn't have to be live like this. But nevertheless, look for those because I definitely want to do those to promote the theaters before the play starts. So other than that, I am, yes, Shonda, you ain't talk about Pearly. Pearly is going to run in September at Pure Life Theater. And so we definitely want people to come. Now that one, I do want Black people to come to because it's fun. That's different than the other ones.
Yeah,
Ain't no
I met
ain't.
Melba Moore. I did. I met her. I met Auntie Melba.
How did you meet her?
Juan got me. That was a sucker punch, Juan. That was a
Mm-hmm.
sucker punch. They set me up. They had the cast on there
We
for a little
sure
The
talk
cast,
and
did.
discussion.
the cast didn't know either. Nobody knew. The cast didn't know.
Nobody knew Melba Moore
The
was
faces were
coming.
Yeah, the faces are priceless.
My favorite torn moment ever. Shonda
Y'all,
Yep.
screaming.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I
And Melba
And
kicked
then
the,
her
the
here.
plug out of the computer, and then the thing died, and I ended up having to go. It was like the heat of COVID, and I had to go end up sitting in the room with Deb to do the interview anyway. It was a whole hot mess. It was a whole
she
hot,
didn't have
wonderful
sense enough
mess.
to she didn't have sense enough to figure out how to put the cord back in the computer.
I couldn't.
Just because she saw Melba Moore.
I was all
So
messed up.
our
It's all
plan
messed
is still to I'm sure Lauren and I will work on that. Our plan is to bring Melba down here, to get Melba down here to see it, and she wants to see it. And then the other funny thing is Shonda and Melba share a birthday. Their birthday is the same day.
Mm-hmm.
So
We're
we
roughly
definitely
the
gonna do
same
that.
height.
Uh-huh. So Shonda is playing the character that Melba won a Tony for. So, and then as you heard Tim say, the season starts in October at Interact, and is
Young
AS is
Frankenstein.
Young Frankenstein
Young
is then,
Frankenstein. And then we
and
have an
then
original show for December with Holidays Remembered, and then American Sun is in January.
Are you gonna tell the rest of it, or is it a surprise?
Oh, I can. No, American Sun is in January, and then we do Side by sometime in March. The wonderful play Roe about Roe versus Wade is in April, and then we end the season with The Color Purple in June. So,
And the Color Purple is one that he said that's the only one that had to be specific. For the Color Purple, you got to have colored people. So
Purple people.
purple people, the purple people eaters. So yes, so guys, I again I thank you so much. Y'all have been on tour more than once, and you guys still come back. And it's funny to me because you guys may think you have nothing to talk about, but we talk about something different every time. And that's actually unfortunate because that just means that this world is still messed up. So, but I appreciate the work that both of you are doing in theater and in this area because it matters and it means something. Aya just said she loves you guys. So, all right,
thank
don't
you
get
so
off,
much.
but we are done. We are done. We got to talk. We have to talk noise during the closing. So
Okay.
I will see you guys.
Good night,
And everybody at
everybody.
home. Good night, everybody.
Good
All
night.
right.
Take care.
Take care. Pearly, my pearly.